Hey everyone, Chris Chico, and today we're having another amazing, which I think is going to be amazing. They're always amazing case study. We're going to be talking about a variety of different things. We're going to start off with obviously Facebook ads, and then also I've got a good friend here, Blair Halver, who's been able to take, everybody has their own particular recipe that they use for any strategy in order to make that strategy work, and for them, and also to optimize it. And also, Blair and I were just having a quick chat before this. And one of the things he mentioned to me is that one of the keys to his success is being a transaction engineer and being able to do more with the leads you've got. And so I think that that's going to be very impactful for you guys. And we're going to be just having a conversation. So first of all, thank you, Blair, for
for coming
Thanks,
on Chris. Thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate it. And could you just cover the basics? Give everybody an idea of what you're doing now. How long ago did you get started? I know you're full-time in the business, but give everybody an idea of who you are.
Well, as you said, my name is Blair Halver. I live in North Carolina. Regular family man, got a wife and 2 kids, but been in the business since about 2009. And actually, Chris, I got to tell you, your old absentee owner course, the virtual wholesaling, was probably one of the first courses I ever bought in this business, and it really set me on the right path.
I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. Pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was cool. And, for a long time, I was doing marketing. I have a company called DealBot. We were doing marketing for other investors, doing lead gen for motivated sellers. And then a few years ago, I was like, man, I'm generating all these leads for all these clients. They're going off and making a bunch of money with it. Why don't I start doing my own flips, my own deals? And so just a few years ago, I started doing my own marketing for myself, generating leads, figuring out how to convert those. And so now we've gotten to the point where, and I'm all about delegation, automation, systems, everything else, right? Mm-hmm. So we've gotten it to the point now where, we're doing 4 or 5 deals a month, but I'm only putting in about 5 hours a week of my personal time into the house business.
Oh, interesting. And so then now so you got started with direct mail, postcard marketing. And I know that recently, then it was about a year ago, right, when I first started showing people how to use Facebook ads. Was that is that when had you done Facebook ads before?
No, not before you showed me the light.
Before it showed you the light. Okay. And it was something. So was it even something you had considered, or just hadn't even come to mind?
Yeah, it was something we had considered, but we hadn't, and we had done several tests actually. But we hadn't figured out how to make it work.
Okay.
We didn't know what to put on the image and the copy, and using the lead forms instead of sending to a landing page, that sort of thing.
Okay. So when you got started, so tell me about, I think we were kind of discussing a little bit the numbers. Give me an idea of when you were running the ads, what were you started running the Facebook ads. And so you got up and running fairly quickly. I think that you got up and running. That was when I first launched the program. So I think you were officially the first guy up and running, period.
Yeah.
I mean, you were up and running within 24 hours.
Yeah. Well, it's like they say, massive action, right?
Right. Exactly. So now as you were running the Facebook ads, what were some of the results that you were getting? Like, give me an idea of your cost per lead. I think we're talking a little bit about that and how the deals that you were getting and how you were engineering those deals too as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. We found the cost per lead would vary, depending on the zip code and that sort of thing. We had them as low as $16 cost per lead and as high as $100 cost per lead. But I guess if you average them out over the long run, it's about $50 cost per lead.
Okay, $50 cost per lead.
Yeah. And we were getting, last I checked, like a deal out of every 24 leads from Facebook. And I just mean like raw total leads on Facebook, not, because sometimes you get non-seller leads, right? They're just non-leads, but people still submit the form from time to time. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Counting all those, everything that came through the lead form, 1 out of 24
to
do a deal for us.
And out of the 1 out of 24 leads, as you're running these, was your model strictly wholesaling? Were you doing fix and flip, or phrase it another way? So one of the challenges that I find is that if you're running a pure wholesaling model, meaning you've got to buy low and you got to sell high, and that's the only thing you've got, then that increases the number of leads you got to go through. and your cost per acquisition. So as you were doing deals here with Facebook, what is your strategy? Do you have like a recipe of either you're always trying to apply it like 4 or 5 different strategies, or what are the main 3 or 4 that you find that now you're able to monitor? Because that's the reason I say that, because a deal out of 24 leads, that's a pretty good number, very good number. Our number typically that we say on average is if you get 50 leads, you should be able to do at least 1. So yours isn't half. So maybe walk through kind of how your strategy for doing that, for getting down to the 24.
Yeah, my big thing that I tell people, other investors that come to me looking for help getting started in the business, and what I tell my team is we got to be transactional engineers, right? We got to be able to take whatever seller situation comes at us,
right,
and figure out how to not only solve that person's problem, that's the main thing, but also how do we make a win-win-win deal for us, no matter how much equity they have, no matter if they're behind on payments or they're current or they own it free and clear, doesn't matter. We take what's given to us, we take what comes at us, no matter what, and then we figure out how to create a win-win solution and then profit out of that. That could be a cash deal, whether we're going to buy it and wholesale, tie it up and then wholesale it, or if we're going to close on it ourselves,
right,
and fix it up and then flip it retail. But honestly, I've only done a handful of those deals. Most of my deals end up lending themselves into what we just call basically a terms deal, where we buy it with seller financing and then we sell it with seller financing, usually a form of seller financing called a lease option. And I know, that maybe is a buzzword out there now, lease options, but, don't get caught up in like the tool, the tactics is the big picture. We want to get seller financing, then that allows us to sell it with seller financing.
So just for those that are not very familiar with it. So in essence, and I'm going to explain it back to you, and you tell me if it's accurate or not. So let's say you have a seller that has a property that let's say it's worth 120. And let's say on that property, the seller is willing to just, once you get rid of the property, they have a mortgage on it for $90,000 as an example, and they only want $5K out of the deal, so 95. But in a typical wholesale deal, 95,000 with an end value of 125 or 130 is not enough of a spread. So typically, I would walk away with that. I would walk away from that deal because there's no equity. There's no more negotiation. For you, you're able to take over the note. You're able to give you're able to give the money, the seller money, so they're happy. You now then take over the existing financing. So now you don't have to go out and get a mortgage. And now you have control over that property. And then now you're able to take via the lease option route and take that property, sell it to an end buyer for a better deal. Like say, if the market's 120, you might sell it to them for 115, or a number that for them it's a great deal. But you're also able to kind of wrap it around and offer them financing, so they don't have to go through a conventional lender.
Yeah.
Which then means that you get some money up front. Typically that varies, or and also at the same time you might make a margin on the monthly payments. Yeah. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and actually the numbers you've laid out in your example are actually very close to my first terms deal I ever did. And I'll just use this as an illustration here. Our ARV was 120, seller owed 90.
Okay.
And she just needed some moving money. She needed like $1,000.
Okay.
So I gave her $1,000, took over her debt. So I bought the property subject to her note, right? Her existing note. And then a week later, ARV was 120. The house was in great shape. We actually sold it above market because we were able to offer financing. So we sold it for $129,900, and we collected a $20,000 down payment from our buyer. And then we collected about $800 a month from our buyer. Right. And our underlying mortgage that we took over was about $600 and change. So we made a little spread on the monthly. Right. And then we still had $20,000 on the back end. So if and when that tenant buyer ever cashes us out, we get another $20,000 check on the back.
Okay, in the back end. Okay. So then that's the reason. So most of the deals that you do, so you might come across a wholesale deal, but and you're never going to turn those away. But even a wholesale deal, you can also do a terms deal on that. So it doesn't eliminate that. But I think so that's the reason why you're able to get. That's one of the things that I say to people is that the more ways you have of monetizing the lead, whether it be creative, whether it be even just, if you can't do a creative deal, you can refer the lead to a realtor. and
Yep.
you can make an arrangement with them again, based on the umbrella of under the umbrella of got to make sure it's legal within your state, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that comes to my mind, and I'll say this here now, is I tell people that, and be more than happy to correct me if this is inaccurate or you feel different, but I tell people that creative financing deals are great. They're fantastic and a great tool belt. However, you have to be careful because unlike wholesaling, the margin of error is smaller. If you do something, you have the wrong paperwork, or something goes wrong, then you've got a big mess on your hands. And so I say that because I don't believe that. I believe there's a lot of stuff out there on YouTube that you can go out there and you can learn, but I don't think this is one of those strategies because you need to know, there's a lot of nuances to it. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because I don't want people listening to this and trying to do a subject to deal and then coming back and say, I got a bit of trouble here on my hands, right? Could you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you and I are definitely on the same page. A simple wholesale assignment is probably the simplest transaction you could ever do, right? You can make all kinds of mistakes and you're going to be fine, right? There's very little liability on your end. The way I look at terms deals is, as long as I'm not writing a big check and putting money into a property,
right?
I've got basically zero risk in the deal, in the house, right? So for me, that's what allows me to operate with less stress, less headache, and that sort of thing. But you're exactly right. You got to know what you're doing. So we close everything with an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do tabletop closings anymore. People used to do that back in the day.
What is that? What is a tabletop?
Well, like you'd go to the seller's house and just have them sign the deed over to you right there.
That's old school.
Don't do that. Don't do that. So we close everything with an attorney. We want to make sure the paperwork's done right. All the CYA letters are signed. You know what I mean?
Right.
And everything's recorded. We do it to the letter of the law, and everything's fine. So we don't get any blowback later. So you kind of got to know what you're doing, or at least hire somebody, an attorney who knows what they're doing to, watch your back like that.
So just to reiterate, because I think the Zoom here gave me a notice that the connection was a little bit unstable. So, basically what he's saying is in the past, when this was taught many, many years ago, 10 years ago, people would go to people's houses and have them sign their mortgage over, right? But, you want to be able to do this on a deal with an attorney. It's done completely so that, also, too, from the seller's perspective, they're going to an attorney. They're going to some place that they feel that this is a legitimate transaction. Not that it isn't otherwise, but at least, also you're covering bases, right? Making sure that if a judge comes to you, I always think about it is that always consider that your answers to a question a judge is going to ask you in court, right? So you want to make sure you don't have any problems. But I say those things not with the intent of saying, oh my gosh, you guys should never even consider doing this type of transaction. Just that this is not a YouTube transaction to go out and figure out on YouTube. What they call YouTube University, right? Right. Do you recall what was your ROI on that in terms of how much you spend and kind of what the profits on the deals were from the ads you were running?
Yeah, our average front end profit per deal is right around 10 to 12,000. So kind of like a wholesale fee.
Right. Okay.
But we've got the benefit of we still own the property after we collect that fee, right? And we get the monthly and everything else. But so I just look at the front end though.
I see.
So call it 10 grand per deal, and if it costs us $50 a lead times 20 leads or whatever.
Right. So it's
good ROI.
Yeah, it's a good ROI. Exactly. And then now, let's say as you're talking to the leads, anything that you feel that you did in order to make the process better as the leads come in, is there a particular time frame that you try to get back to them at? What's any particular guidelines that you would give as recommendations to making that work better?
Yeah. So the big killer in this business, in my opinion, when you're dealing with leads is phone tag. So whatever we can do to eliminate phone tag is going to be good for business, right? So we actually we use Zapier to, pull the data from the lead form automatically, right?
Right.
And then we use a combination of Zapier and then CallRail. I think probably a lot of your listeners, use CallRail.
Right.
Well, you get their pro version or whatever now, you get access to their API. It's kind of a backdoor kind of way. We would set up Zapier to initiate an outbound call from CallRail to the seller as soon as they submit the form. And so
Oh,
they're calling my agent, my VA. And then when my VA picks up, he presses one. This is call rail, calls the VA. He presses one, and it dials out to the seller. So we're like talking to him ASAP.
right there on the spot. Okay. So that's very, now you had to do, Zapier does that natively. You can do that?
Well, no. So Zapier has a built-in app called Webhooks by Zapier.
Yeah. Okay. You got to use
So
the
you
web.
got to use the webhooks, and you
Okay.
got to go through the call rail API document. So it's not for everybody.
Not for everybody. Okay.
But that's just a fancy automation, right? You could just have it just send you an email and you just call them right then.
Right.
I mean,
Right. So I mean, the big picture is, unless you were a ninja like Blair is here, right? uh, so even though I'm a tech guy and I don't know how to do that. So I'm second world ninja. He's first world. But speed is of the
speed to lead.
yeah,
Yeah.
speed to lead. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's the big thing. And then the way we run our business, and I hear a lot of guys, wholesalers out there talking about, let's just get in front of the seller as quickly as possible, set an appointment with every lead. Well, we do it kind of backwards. We do it the opposite of that. So we'll have the virtual assistant run an opening call with them. We're basically just collecting the information about the house, the mortgage,
right.
and fielding them, pre-screening them to see if, would you be open to a terms deal, owner finance or a lease purchase, or are you just looking for all cash? Once he has that opening call done, he sends that information over to our acquisitions, and then they run a closing call with that seller over the phone. And the closing call basically pre-negotiates the deal for you. And then you're doing all that before you even go out to the house, because there's no point in going out to the house if you're not going to be able to get a deal, in my opinion. Now, other guys will tell you, go to the house, build rapport, but we don't do it like that.
So in other words, most of the time, not most of the time, but a lot of guys say the minute somebody throws something out, they do some slight pre-screening, and then they say book the appointment, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you want to be able to, are you looking to have a price negotiated before you go to the house?
We want an idea of what the seller wants.
Got it. Okay.
That'd be the minimum. Yeah.
The minimum. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you ever skip the process of going to the house and then just going ahead and doing the deal on the phone?
Well, so we always want to go to the house because I want somebody to actually lay eyes on it.
Okay.
And see if it's what the seller said it was. And then we got to get the paperwork started right then. Of course, you can do it DocuSign and that sort of thing. And
right.
Sometimes we buy from people who are out of town. Then we do by email or whatever. But normally we want to go to the house and just get it signed up in person.
Talk to me about what you mentioned before in terms of how do you have your real estate business structured? Because you said that you spend about 5 hours a week. Well, first of all, how many team members do you have in order to facilitate that for you?
Yeah. So I've got one virtual assistant and I have 2 acquisitions people.
Okay.
And one of those acquisitions kind of pulls double duty as an administrative assistant. So she handles a lot of the admin work.
Got it. And are they local, or they're local? Everybody is local. The VA and the acquisitions are local.
The VA is in the Philippines.
Right.
And, we've been working with him for a long time and he's great. Having a good VA on the front end it's almost like a maker or breaker for your business,
So the VA is someone that is the one that does the initial screening call for them?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. And then if you don't mind me asking, what do you recommend? Let's put it that way. Because sometimes what people do is on the front end when they're hiring a VA, one of the challenges that I see that they go out for the cheapest. They want to get like a $2 VA. Then they can't figure out why they can't close any deals and why they can't find any leads, right?
Yeah.
So could you maybe give some tips on that in terms of what you found works best?
Actually, right now, my VA, we pay him $5 an hour, and that's enough for him to make a good living and, buy his own health insurance.
Okay.
But then we also pay him a bonus for each deal that we complete. So he'll get another $200 whenever we make some money off a house. Sure. Yeah. So that's like, he's doing well.
So he makes pretty good money.
Yeah.
Right. Is he driving a Ferrari in the Philippines? No, not yet.
Not that I know of. He's into airsoft guns, so he probably bought a few more of those by now.
And then the acquisitions person, do you do commission only, or do you do any hybrid compensation model?
Yeah. So we work 2 markets. One is Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The other is Charlotte, North Carolina. I happen to live halfway between the 2. Okay. But I have 1 acquisitionist in each city.
Okay.
So the one in Charlotte, he's just commission only. He'll get 20% of the front end profit with no cap.
20%.
The other acquisitionist in Winston-Salem, who also pulls double duty as my admin, she gets a weekly salary, about $600 a week for all that admin stuff that she does. And then we'll also pay her for any deals that she does. We'll give her 20% on the front end, but it's capped at $3,000 per deal.
Oh, I see. Capped at 3,000 per
Yeah.
deal. Why the cap on the 3K?
Well, because we're already giving her a weekly salary.
I see. Got it. Okay.
We just kind of limit it, because then the other guy might be thinking, well, I want a weekly salary too. Well, we'll give you a weekly salary if you agree to a cap on your commission.
Okay.
But he wants it open-ended, no cap.
Interesting. Have you thought about sometimes on this? Because I've done this where you pay somebody weekly, but then the percentage is different, right? So in other words, there's no cap on the percentage, but the percentage is different. And then the conversation is, hey, if you wanted to make more, we've had to eliminate the weekly salary. Is that something you had done in the past or considered, or no?
No, we always just had it at 20% on the front end.
Okay.
But that cap is almost kind of does the same thing, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it does. Yeah.
There are deals where she would have made more than the 3,000.
Right.
But she did, she'd rather have a solid, steady weekly income in it, instead of bigger commissions.
So do you talk to the sellers at all?
No, I haven't talked to a seller in at least a year.
Okay. And so then now, so just to make sure I understand, so leads come in and you go through, there's a fact-finding call. Then there's a closing call. Is a closing call done by the acquisitions person?
That's right.
Okay, closing call done by the acquisitions person. Then the acquisitions person goes to the property, sign it up. And then in terms of disposition, who handles disposition?
So we have each acquisition person handle the disposition for their own deals.
Got it. Okay.
I want them to be in charge of their payday. I don't want them having to, getting worried and concerned, relying on somebody else on the team.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And are they the acquisitions people? Were they people that were interested in real estate investing initially, or they just starting from scratch, didn't know anything, and then you got them involved, or they're aspiring real estate investors?
One of them, the commission-only guy, he was an aspiring real estate investor, but he realized something about himself. He doesn't want to be out on his own.
Okay.
So he'd much rather just take 20% and then let me handle all the headaches of running the business. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah, because you pay for all the marketing. Obviously, you pay for all the marketing, the infrastructure, and so you have all the risk involved, right?
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
But the other acquisitionist, she had no real estate background other than she used to be a leasing agent for an apartment complex a long time ago.
Okay.
So she was just working in retail. But the reason I hired her is because she had such a great attitude. And I always tell people it's like hire for attitude because and she's so grateful for this job.
Right.
She just has the best attitude and she's loyal. She's coachable. I mean, that's huge. I can teach her how to do whatever I need to do.
Right.
As long as she has that good attitude.
And talk to me about, one of the common questions that comes up is team building at the expense of ROI. Like, in other words, a lot of times I say this to people is there's a difference between front stage and backstage. And many times we hear the Instagram version of the real estate business, right? Yeah. Meaning that, like, somebody could say I'm doing 15 to 20 deals. They could be showing a lot of checks and everything else, but they're running quite a bit of an operation, staff, and everything. And then when all said and done, there's not a whole lot of net, right? So your business is, let's say we compare it to on one end is the one-man show. On this end is the person that has like 15 employees and running and gunning and doing a lot of deals. Yours is kind of like a little bit in the middle, but maybe, it's a small team. Any advice or any comments you would have about that in terms of, like, when you look at this, are you looking to expand, or what's your thought process around that?
Yeah, that's important for me, and that's something I talk about with my friends who are asking me like how to get in this business. Is like, you don't need to spend 30 grand a month on marketing, right? When you can do a deal with any lead that comes at you. I mean, we get deals just by calling for sale by owner listings. We get deals just by calling expired listings, right? So cheap deals, right?
Right.
I want to keep my overhead as low as possible. And I'll tell people that, if you're just starting out, you could probably get away with $600 a month in overhead. and that's for, you know, a part-time VA and the systems you need to enable him to do what he needs to do.
Right.
But I'm up to about 4,000 a month.
Right.
Right. So, but, and that includes marketing. You see
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Well,
I'm big on the keeping the overhead low.
I was talking to there was I don't want to say who it was, but I was talking to another gentleman that he had at one point 15 staff, and he was spending about well, actually he was sending about 50 to 60,000 postcards a month. So obviously that, you know, that generates a bunch of activity. So now you need even more people, right, because of that. And then in the end, he realized that he just wasn't making that much money, like net. Yeah. And he had a lot of overhead and a lot of the issues related to that. And the other, you know, and so now he scaled back. He has a much smaller team, but it's much more profitable.
Yeah.
And you know, the other thing is with regards to real estate, I think the like say if somebody's doing direct mail and they're doing great at 10,000 mailers a month, sometimes they think they can triple their income by doing 3 or 4 times as much. And the numbers never pan out that way, right? Yeah. It's not like as if you could send out 3 times more, you do 3 times more deals. Like, no, right. You send out 3 times more mail and you get marginally a few more deals, but not much. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. And so let me ask you a question in terms of the transaction engineering. Let me go back to that. What's the, is that, you know, for somebody starting out brand new, is that a hard thing for them to learn? Is that something difficult for people to learn?
I mean, for me, the way my brain works, I like it. Like, to me, just making cash offers on everything is kind of boring. Right. You know? I want to be a problem solver, a creative problem solver. And so that, you know, if you have some creative ability in problem solving, I think that goes a long way in you being able to do the deal. But then again, you know, if you've got a script in front of you and you're running a closing call and you're just following the script and you've got the right script in front of you, you know, it makes it easy because it just walks you through the deal. You know,
right. So. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And so then, yeah, I mean, that's the thing I think about all the time is that there's so many variables to this business. So if somebody says, hey, I talked to 50 sellers and what I'm doing isn't working because I didn't get a deal, sometimes it's very hard to troubleshoot that because there's so many variables, including what, you know, your conversations with the sellers and how you're able to piece that deal together, right? So I definitely am a fan of that. But again, I just say, people ask me that all the time, and I know enough about it to be dangerous, but I'm not an expert at it, so I don't teach it, right? Because of that. I wanted to mention, and I'll put this in the description here of the video. You actually do teach that. You teach the transaction engineering portion of that business, right? Yeah. Okay. Because you've been doing that now for how long?
3 or 4 years now.
Okay. And is that something that new people can get going with? You don't have to be experienced. You can get started even if you're brand new in the business, right?
That's right.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, guys, is because what I wanted to get, you know, Blair and I was interested. I do these interviews because I'm interested in knowing what someone is doing, right? Obviously, we started about Facebook ads, but in the conversation beforehand, he talked about a couple of things that I myself am interested. So I asked the questions as if you and I are having a conversation on the phone. And I also, when you mentioned, you know, just like, hey, you know, doing your business, doing, you know, just 5 hours a week, I was like, you know, I'd like to know how you have that structured, right? So I have a better idea in terms of what I could do with mine, etc. But Blair also does teach that creative financing, all the contracts and the paperwork and how to talk to the sellers and the conversations to have. I'll put a link in the description. I'll say this is that I don't make any money in any capacity for if you click on the link and you go to Blair and Blair has something going on and, you know, hey, you sign up with him and you get help from him, I make no money of that. And I do that purposely because also at the same time, if I say, hey, I trust Blair, he has great information, and I think he's the guy that can help you, you know that I'm doing that from just the perspective of as if you and I were friends and I was recommending you someone and not getting any compensation at all whatsoever. So I say that just to let you guys know that I know Blair, he's been doing this forever. And he, you know, I don't know this creative financing in any capacity near what Blair knows. and I am not certainly qualified to teach it. And I leave it with that. I'm qualified to teach a lot of things, but that ain't one of them. Okay. What sort of advice? So I'll put the links in the description, and also I don't know if you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook. Get me the links, and I'll put them on the description here, so that if anybody wants to connect with you after the once they watch this video, then they can do so. For somebody starting out brand new, if you were to say give one or two pieces of advice to someone starting out brand new, trying to get their first deal, anything in particular that you would tell them that would help them in kind of shortening that painful period of trying to, do the grunt work required to get your first deal?
Yeah. When I talk to people who are just starting out in the business, the main thing that I want to remind them of is that as long as you talk to enough sellers, a deal will eventually come. I don't know when.
Right.
When I first started, it took me 5 months, right? But once I got the first deal, it clicked, and then they just started coming and coming and coming. But the point is, talking to sellers is that one piece of the business, one most important piece of the business. As long as you're talking to enough of them, deals will come. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Well, I said this to a couple of people. I was at the Grant Cardone 10X event. I said this to a couple of people, is that most people are digging 2-foot wells, but the water is 10 feet deep.
Right?
Yep. Meaning that, and that applies in everything, right? It applies, like I talk to people all the time, and they're saying they're doing direct mail. I say, how many postcards you send out? Well, I sent 1,000, and I didn't get a deal. And I'm like, you need to send out like 2,000 a week for like 10, for 2 months, and maybe now we might have that conversation about what's going on. And the same thing with everything else. People say I'm doing cold calling. I say, well, how many I'll cold call for 2 days and get a deal. I'm like, buddy, we're not even scratching the surface. What are you talking about? Right? Yeah. That's like trying to run a marathon. You told me you ran a block. No, that ain't going to cut it. However, the same thing I think applies to, I think that's the one thing that people don't pay enough attention to is how to get better on the phone with sellers.
Yeah.
And how to hone that craft, because
it takes practice.
Yeah. And for most people, they could do literally nothing more than what they're doing right now and hone in on those conversations and have better results without having to spend any more money.
Yeah. That's one of the things is like, the deals are, if you've done some marketing in the past and you haven't gotten deals out of there, that's not because there are no deals in that database, right? You probably got deals sitting there. You just don't know how to see them or dig them up. And so talking to the sellers, it takes practice. I still remember the first week I started making outbound calls to sellers. I was literally shaking with fear, right? But after 3 calls, I'm like, this is nothing. You know what I mean? So
there's always that first call.
Just do it. Yeah.
There's always that first call, the first time somebody yells at you, time calls you a name. After a while, then, it's downhill from there. It gets a lot easier.
That's right.
So guys, I'll put the link in the description. You want to reach out to Blair. I appreciate you sharing the information about how you have your team structure, because that's a great structure, I think, for somebody starting out, when they can look at where they're at and where they need to go next. I think that's very, very manageable. So I appreciate you sharing that, and appreciate you, taking the time for us to chat on the phone. Yeah.
Oh man, I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for having me on, and thank you for doing what you do and like pioneering a lot of the marketing stuff that all the rest of us use in our own businesses. So I really appreciate that.
I appreciate that. So thank you. And I always say the first interview is like this. The second one has to be you and I live together.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Sounds perfect. Good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Blair.
All right. Thanks, Chris.